What's up guys, it's Bones, and today we're going to be talking about this log splitter by Kabin. So I've owned this log splitter for about a couple years now, and it's held up pretty well, all things considered. I use it about once a week in the summertime. In the winter, I don't really use it that much. You know, the winters get so brutal around here that having fires is pretty rare. But there is an occasional winter fire that happens up once in a while, and I'll bust this thing out, you know, so I can split up a little bit of kindling. But for the most part, held up pretty well. It's cast steel. It's powder coated black. It has a little bit of rust on it, which I expected to happen, you know, over the course of owning it for 2 full years. It's taken quite a beating. I use it about once per week throughout the summer and the fall, and then the winter I kind of put it away. I've split a lot of different wood with it, all different types. I mean, obviously the stronger type of wood, it's going to take a few more hits to get it through this actual log splitter. But I think depending upon what type of tool you are using to actually split the wood, for me, I use a 5-pound maul that really helps get through the wood. It only takes 1 or 2 hits usually, and I can get through most type of woods. There's few pieces of wood that have more trouble getting through, and I do have a slight bend on the wedge part of itself. It doesn't really affect it now. I mean, it still splits wood just fine, but I think when it happened, I was splitting a piece of like wood that had a Y in it, you know, or a knot, something like that, where it was really difficult to split through, and I just kept on pounding, and it did make it through eventually, but it did damage it just slightly. But like I said, it doesn't affect it. I still keep using it, and it still keeps working. So, you know, for 2 years of being able to take a beating, I'll consider that a win. When I bought this, it was about 80 bucks, and that was a couple years ago. I mean, I think they're a little bit more money now. I just looked on Amazon. They were 120 bucks with like a $10 coupon off, but everything goes up in price right now. So still not a bad deal, considering that you'll probably have it for many years for moderate use. I mean, if you're a heavy user all the time, you know, maybe you'll go through, you know, a few of these, but for me, having 1 fire a week and splitting up a few things here and there, I foresee having this for at least a decade or more. You can screw this thing down to a log or, you know, some sort of table or whatever you want to do. I don't do that personally because I like being able to take this in and out of the shed as need be, and if it's attached to something bigger, that just makes it more cumbersome. But you know, if you're hitting this thing hard enough, it will fall over if you don't have like a perfectly good strike, but to me, that's not really that big a deal. Something to note though is when you are splitting wood, you want to make sure you have relatively smaller pieces of wood, because the opening on this is not going to allow you to fit big chunks of wood. You have to have a smaller piece in order to get it to smaller chunks of wood, which that's what this device is used for, is making kindling to start your fire out. And you know, you can break down some logs, you know, into smaller chunks too if you want to have just a smaller fire, or you need just smaller pieces of wood. But do take note that, you know, you can't stick a massive piece of wood in here and expect it to fit and or split it. In the box, all there was 1 sheet of instructions, and they're pretty self-explanatory. You put a piece of wood in, and then you take a hammer or a maul and swing it down and hit it. So, I mean, it's not, you know, really rocket surgery here when it comes to splitting wood, but, you know, just in case you didn't know how to do it, there are some instructions there for you. There's a lot of different versions of this out there. I believe there's one called the kindling cracker that's by a different brand that works just as fine as well. I know I've used a kindling cracker before at a friend's lake. If I was to get the kindling cracker, I would definitely got the bigger version of it, because there's a couple different sizes. Do yourself a favor and just get the bigger version, so that way you can fit bigger chunks of wood in here. This one by Kabin, this is the only size available on it. It still fits my needs just fine, so I would definitely get a Kabin again. It does have a little tray here that you can kind of set, you know, your kindling pieces in there after you've chop them up and use them as a basket. I don't do that because, you know, I carry my wood from right here to basically the other side of the camera is where our fire pit is. So I don't really need to carry it, but you know, maybe that's something you would need in your situation. But mine doesn't call for it. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with this purchase, and it is very satisfying to be able to split wood and not have to use, an axe, because let's be honest, you got to swing pretty hard with an axe, and if you miss with an axe, you're going to be having a bad day. Being able to use a maul or a hammer and this log splitter, it's a lot safer of a device. If you guys like this and maybe think that you could utilize it in your household or your camper or your lake home or wherever, I'll leave a link in the description. Hopefully this review was helpful to you, and if you like this type of content, maybe consider subscribing.